provides us a nice framework to address these. Now, within these, water, of course, is a key aspect. Okay, so the way that we want to address this, of course, is enable people to firstly understand what the issues are. How do you address this? And then, of course, help anyone that is an operator or management entity in an industrial space to actually have the kind of tools that they need, to address the water side of things, which is where this guide fits in. Okay, so again, the guide is not intended to, be a tick box exercise. It's not intended to be a certification tool. It's not intended to be a standard. It is not. Okay, if you and hopefully, if you are interested, that this guide will be the first step towards certification with the International Water Standard. Okay, that's really where I think, especially if you're a larger company, that would be ideal for you to strive towards. If you're a small SME, maybe not ideal as a start. Okay, but everyone needs to contribute towards addressing water. Secondly, also because South Africa is a water scarce country. Okay, so in fact, we are one of the most water scarce countries in the world. All right, so how do you deal with that as an organization, as a company, and at an industrial park level? So that's where this guide comes in, and that's the intention of this guide, is really to introduce everyone within that ecosystem, if I may use that term loosely, effectively all the stakeholders, to understand the issues. How do we work together to ensure that we actually manage our water resource as effectively as possible? And that's the long and the short of the context of the Water Stewardship Guide. Again, I did mention, the different tools that we are developing, together with UNIDO, who is running the Global Eco-Industrial Park Program in South Africa, which is a flagship program for the Eco-Industrial Park work. There are a whole bunch of other tools that are being developed. For example, an access to finance tool, an eco-industrial park assessment tool, a master planning tool that we're currently working on, which is kind of a master plan guide that expands on the DTIC's guide that we have had to date, and a number of others. Okay, we are, for example, working on one with resilience as well with GIZ. We are working on one looking at energy with the CSR. We are also starting to look at a grading or a rating system for industrial parks to enable industrial parks to measure their performance going forward. Okay, the intention of that performance, of course, is to aid DTIC when someone comes to DTIC for assistance on the one hand, but also for an industrial park management entity to actually understand where they fit in terms of the life cycle of that park. What needs to be done next? What are the kind of things that need to be done? Okay, right. That's just a brief introduction. I think, Amanda, if we can jump to the agenda, then I can just take everyone through that. Everyone can refer to that. That's enough said from my side. I did not introduce myself. I will do that now. So I'm Bernd Ulerman from the DTIC. I work in regional industrial development, and I've done quite a bit of work on the eco-industrial park side. And I will attempt to direct the program this morning. So with my introduction, I'm now going to introduce just a couple of people that will just share a couple of words of endorsement for the guide and some of their thinking around this. It won't be too long, don't worry. We actually want to get to a presentation of what the guide is about, and then also panel discussion a bit later. But first on the list, we have Tommy Claassen from the DTIC, who also works in our area on regional industrial development, but also has another leg in special economic zones. In fact, Tommy has a couple of legs all over the show. He's really snowed under, so we really appreciate the time that he's here. Tommy has been really instrumental in guiding the work on industrial parks and the thinking in the country. So, Tommy, I'm going to hand over to you.
Yeah, once more, good morning to all of you. And I think it's our privilege, honestly, that we have this kind of workshop being finalizing the work that has been done towards the consideration of applications of green economy on our industrial parks. I think it has been an awesome journey leading to this launch today, so that ultimately we can all somehow sing from one hymn sheet with respect to the work that we want to do going forward in making sure that we've got a a resilient sort of approach towards our industrial parks, especially because considering the many turbulences that we are currently experiencing, partly due to the pollution and all the other things that lead, obviously, to a heightened environmental concerns in our times. I think as well, we are of the view that we want to be aggressive on industrialization, but we want to do it responsibly. So this launch comes at a very good opportune time where also the DTIC, especially our minister, has taken it upon himself that we should have a clear program that illustrates our application of the green economy. I know Barent is calling it more of the circular economy, but if we take the two application and discourses together, we'll ultimately, I'm sure, come up with a resolution that will make us more responsive and sort of build a sustainable industrial complexes as we develop and revitalize our industrial communities. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tommy. Next up, we're going to have Faith Lawrence from the GIZ. Faith has really been a great partner for the DTIC, as has GIZ and Amanda and everyone else from GIZ. So we're extremely honored and blessed to have Faith working with us. This work has come a long way. Faith, I'm going to hand over to you to say a couple of words.
Hi, Ben. Thank you very much. And maybe, hello, everybody. Maybe just a quick background. Natures is a global initiative aiming at improving economic and environmental resilience in catchments, in industrial parks, in supply chains, and in cities. And for us, we do it primarily through a stewardship approach. I mentioned that we are a global program because this particular piece of work is part of our work, our 3-country work, where we've looked at how do we address the topic of water stewardship and resilient practice in economic zones in South Africa, in Tanzania, and as well as Ethiopia. And we're so very pleased that with the partnership that we have with Water Witness International, that's been supporting us in our work across the 3 countries, as well as Pegasus, specifically in South Africa, that's partnered with us very much to try and get the content, the credible content within this particular SOP that we've jointly developed out together with the team. So thanks to our partners. I should actually say that really we couldn't have done this without the excellent guidance and leadership of the DTIC, and I want to call out Tami Klassen and Bernd Ollemann, who's just been phenomenal in really working with us and being open to our introduction of the topic of water stewardship and resilient economic zones, and to try and journey with us on what it actually means in South Africa to have credible water usage in industrial parks, but to also try and reflect a little bit about how do we address the topic of shared risks. So an industrial park doesn't operate in isolation of the city, of its municipality, of its neighboring community, and of course of the natural environment. And this has really been a wonderful opportunity to really unpack what water stewardship actually means in the context of industrial parks in South Africa. I want to really say this is the start of a journey, and as Bernd mentioned, there are other topics that we're working on together with the DTIC team, but it's been a phenomenal journey up to now, and really we really want to thank all of you practitioners in the field of industrial resilience, building resilience in South Africa, who are really our champions and who will journey with us as we try and be more efficient in terms of resource usage and really strategic in terms of how we apply it in a credible way. So without further ado, I want to thank you all, and thanks to the DTIC team, and I look forward to the deliberations today. Thanks, Bernd.
Lovely. Thank you, Faith. Next up, in the couple of words to be said, is Matt Cullinan from the Atlanta Special Economic Zone. Atlantis, again, has been quite forward-thinking in terms of its development plans, and it would be great to give Matt an opportunity to speak. Before he does, can I just ask everyone just to make sure that you are muted, please? Because we have every now and then, I know it happens, people are just not muted. Just make sure that you're muted. Matt, over to you.
Hi, morning everyone, and thanks very much, Bernd. We're very pleased to be part of this launch. I think it's a very exciting initiative, and one that we've already benefited from considerably. So really been a great journey so far, and we're benefiting hugely from this process. The SEZ, the Atlantis, is a green tech SEZ, and our vision is to be the place where Africa's green economy grows. And as part of that, we're very much committed to a low carbon, resource efficient and socially inclusive approach in everything that we do. So that goes in how we look at potential tenants in the zone. So if people want to come into the zone, if investors or tenants want to come in, we assess their production process to see if it's resource efficient and contributes to a lower carbon economy, or if the product that they're producing itself contributes to that, or is a green tech product, such as a solar panel or a wind tower, a wind turbine, or something that's related very specifically to something in the green economy. But what we've also said is that we need to walk that walk. So as a zone itself, we also need to run and operate the zone as a low carbon, resource efficient and socially inclusive zone. And so that's really informed all the programs that we've undertaken. Now, fortunately, that also lines up quite well with UNIDO's Eco-Industrial Park framework. So we've really adopted that framework very much, and but we've also understood that this whole process of green and green tech is very much an evolving process. It's a constantly changing field. So what is green today may be just normal practice tomorrow. I mean, even things like rooftop solar is almost at a point where it's just so mainstream now, or it's at the point where it's so mainstream that as a green initiative in and of itself, one would say, is that enough? In terms of buildings, for example. So I think it's a constantly moving field, and the technology and the new initiatives are constantly coming up. So it's an area in which one also is learning the whole time. And so we've kind of coupled to the Eco-Industrial Park framework this idea of a living lab. So using the zone itself as an opportunity to try out and test some, if you like, cutting edge approaches, not in a rash or a silly way, but in a studied way, in a scientific way, to look at how we can really advance the idea of sustainable manufacturing. And so in that context, we've got a number of goals: net zero carbon, net zero water, net zero waste to landfill, and also, in a sense, net zero impact on the ecosystems or ecology, although we've just called that working with nature. In that context, water is perhaps the most challenging of those. It's really a very dynamic process, if you like. It sits in a much bigger system than the park. And so these water stewardship guidelines have been really enormously helpful and very valuable initiative for us in exploring how we as an industrial park can begin to explore this concept of net zero water. So I think the launch of the water stewardship SOP is very, very timely. It holds immense potential for supporting the site to engage in water stewardship, both with initiatives within our factories, but also beyond it, and how we play a role as an industrial park in the broader catchments. So we're very excited to see the launch of these operating procedures, and also really want to say Thank you so much to the DTIC and to Bernd, to Tommy, to GIZ. The fact that this initiative was there, already existing, already breaking ground and leading the way has helped us enormously in being able to also walk this path. So, and the support that we've got has been fantastic. So it's really made a huge difference, and we're very excited to see where this goes from here and onwards. So thanks very much.
Excellent. Thank you, Matt. Last but not least, Tefo Matla from the Free State Development Corporation. Tefo has been one of the park managers participating quite actively in the DTIC's work for revitalization, but also from an eco-industrial park perspective. Puta di Chaba is one of the parks in the global eco-industrial park program. We have 3 parks presently, East London, RDZ, Puta di Chaba, and Econdustria, in the first phase. So, Tefo, please, over to you, if I hope your bandwidth permits.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Ben. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Wanted to switch on the video. I don't know if can you see me or not? Yes.
I don't see you, but please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yes, colleagues, we are the Free State Development Corporation from the Free State. We are one of the few selected industrial parks to participate in the Eco-Industrial Park Program, as Ben has said. So we are very much pleased to join you today in this very special occasion of the celebration of the water stewardship. In particular, I just want to say we want to thank DTIC, we want to thank GIZ in partnering with the DTIC in order to make sure that this program is finalized at the end of the day. And I also want to say thank you to NCPC, who's running the program of the Eco-Industrial Park. So this has been a very, colleagues, a very special moment to us. One of the industrial parks which is sitting right in the area whereby there's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of unemployment. But I can tell you that so far NCPC has done a lot of work in terms of identifying opportunities in the park. And I hope that this one of the stewardship of the water is going to be one of the great moment as well. It's going to help a lot of our clients. We really welcome this initiative because it's going to help our tenants, in particular those who are using a lot of water. You'll find that in our industrial park, we've got a lot of tenants who are using a lot of water in toilet paper manufacturing, food processing as well. So this is really going to be an opportunity for them to make sure that they are sparing and they are controlling such resources. As you know that in our Maluti Apofu area, we are one of the struggling municipality in terms of the resources. If I can share with the colleagues, we are supplied. The Maluti Apofu is the service provider of the electricity and water in this area. And we have been on the news for some not good reasons in the past because of the scarcity of water and things like that. So this program is going to be very much important for us, not only for FDC, not only for the tenants, also for the Maluti Apofu in particular. I've tried to invite our acting CEO from MAP Water. I wonder if he joined, but if not, it's not a problem. But I shared the information with them because they are the company which is running the water in our area. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say thank you very much for this initiative. We really support it, and we are going to support it as it's going to make sure that our vacancy rate in our industrial park is increasing because we have a lot of problems here. One of them is one of water. So thank you very much, and I wish you a very good luck in this initiative. We'll support this program by contributing each and every day. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you, Tefo. Derek, we're going to hand over right through to you. Maybe you want to start up that presentation. Derek Weston and his team were quite instrumental in developing this work. Derek, over to you.
Great stuff. You seeing that okay, Bernd?
Yes, it's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity, colleagues. I'll be swift. I think so much of what has been said is immensely valuable in terms of the drivers behind water stewardship and the importance of that. In my previous life, I was in government. I was in government and with water and sanitation for many years, and I still see myself as a civil servant, just playing a slightly different role. The complexity of managing water is such that it is beyond just a government department to sort of drive, own, manage, operate, implement, and so forth. We all have to take responsibility for what in our country is a scarce natural resource, but equally a critical resource in so much of our sort of livelihoods, our economy, and so forth. And so these sorts of initiatives to sort of nudge actors and water users in the right direction in terms of the way that we manage water is critically important. I think I like what Bernd was saying earlier. This is not a standing operating procedure as many of us would understand an SOP. This really is probably more of a guideline in some ways. The thing that excites me is that when we have these meetings like this and we see the number of people attending, that this community of practice is growing, and we need to use these kind of instruments to sort of push the envelope, to develop our understanding, to learn, but equally to share. And of course, that disclosure and sharing is a key part of the stewardship agenda. And so colleagues, I mean, this is a valuable first step in terms of driving towards improved water stewardship. But it's as our other colleagues have rightly said just now, it's just the first step. We need to keep developing. We need to keep sharing as we learn and develop approaches and so on. And I know sometimes it's difficult in the industrial space because there is competitive and comparative advantage for business. But I still firmly believe that actually that sharing of practice only just pushes us forward for better processes, more innovation, and so forth. So there's my political speech. Let's get into the nuts and bolts of the SOP itself. And I'll go through this very quickly. Obviously stewardship has developed in the last probably 10 to 15 years considerably. The Alliance for Water Stewardship defined this as being the use of natural resources that is socially, culturally, equitably, environmentally sustainable, but also economically beneficial. And we achieve that through a stakeholder inclusive process that includes both site and catchment based actions. And I think that's a sort of profound statement from the perspective of, for a long time, a lot of stewardship initiatives have been focused inside the fence, but key protagonists like Alliance for Water Stewardship, the work that's been done by Natures under the GIZ banner, have all been saying, that's great, we need to look inside our factory fence, but we equally need to move outside the factory fence and start understanding ourselves within the catchment context. Why are businesses worried about water and water stewardship? I mean, clearly there are imperatives that drive this. Many businesses can suffer from sort of loss of legal and social license to operate, where they are polluting or not using water efficiently. That can result in some sort of brand damage and ultimately diminished investment. In certain instances, this can impact our productivity. Obviously, water scarcity can influence processes, but equally WASH and the notion of water and sanitation hygiene is increasingly being included in in the stewardship banner, noting that our workers need access to safe and sustainable water and sanitation services. And of course, it can result in ultimately high operational costs as well. So there are quite a few different drivers, and these are nuanced, and they're nuanced in every single context. The stewardship process has really developed over the years, and there have been key protagonists. In going through this process and working with DTIC and GIZ and other partners, we work very closely with the Alliance for Water Stewardship, and have used the Alliance for Water Stewardship as a basis for structuring the SOP. The Alliance for Water Stewardship is a globally recognized standard, and Mark will be talking to some of that later today. So I won't steal his thunder. But what's useful about the Alliance for Water Stewardship framework is that in a sense it's not just a standard; it's a very useful tool. So it takes you through a very useful process of gathering and understanding your context, of making a commitment and planning, of realizing implementation, tracking your performance and evaluating that, and then finally sort of communicating and disclosing where you are at, so that you can further strengthen your approaches and so on. And the AWS standard is structured around 5 key themes around good water governance, making sure we have a sustainable water balance, that we're mindful of water quality, that we consider ourselves in the context of other important water-related areas, important wetlands, important river systems, and so on. And then, of course, the notion of safe water and sanitation and hygiene. So translating that into the notion of developing water stewardship within an industrial park, obviously I've just mentioned at the top left there these sort of drivers, these key risks that will push businesses to think about water stewardship. But there's clearly economic, environmental, social benefits, and ultimately a sort of a business benefit in terms of promoting credibility. But we realize, obviously, when we're thinking about water stewardship in practice, it does require engagement and collaboration. That's not always comfortable for some, because there's often a complex suite of relationships and actors that we have to engage with. And each of these actors come into this discourse with different viewpoints, different lenses, different agendas, and that's not always easy to manage. But certainly at an industrial park level, there's an opportunity to pull together a number of actors within that industrial park that share common concerns and common risks and so on, and then to ultimately take an approach that collectively they can participate in, and that way they sort of can develop a suite of shared objectives. They can share some of that sort of collective risk, but also then realize sort of mutually beneficial outcomes. The SOP itself is structured around 3 core areas, isn't it? Obviously, an introduction to the notion of water stewardship. Then there's the central and the core part of the document itself is around how we sort of standardize and systematize the approach. And so there's a number of steps that the SOP takes you through, and I'll go through some of those just now. And then lastly, in the appendices, there's a series of tools and templates, and these are by no means sort of cast in concrete. They really are there to assist and guide, noting that often with stewardship you can make it as complex as you need it to be. It's ultimately about the outcome more than it is about the sort of complexity of the tools and approaches that you use. So that's the way the SOP is structured, and it really is structured in a similar way to the sort of way that AWS thinks about their process. It really is a sort of a plan, do, check, act process around sort of understand your context, do some planning, get yourself structured, and structuring is important. Once we've developed our plans, undertake actions. You don't have to achieve everything all at once. Think about that in a phased and progressive way. and then undertake some sort of review for your continual improvement. And of course, when you're doing that review, it really is important to share. And I'll keep emphasizing this notion of disclosure and sharing what we've learned. So phase one is really all around understanding your current context. That means obviously looking at your own water use, and that's within the industrial park, as well as within the site and the factory itself. And I'll talk more about that right at the end. You need to obviously understand your regulatory sort of compliance issues, but it's really important to understand your catchment context, and the management issues that are happening within that catchment. We are not an island, and we are often downstream or upstream of other users. And so we really need to sort of take the time to understand that catchment context within which we operate. And equally at the same time, understand who are the other actors, the key stakeholders. How important are they to engage? Engage with them, their power, their influence, and all these kinds of things, so that we understand who we really need to engage with. So that's the sort of preparatory phase. The second phase around structuring and planning, we obviously need to get commitment. And businesses that are obviously part of bigger and sort of global actors have a more of a journey in terms of getting that commitment sometimes, depending on who your shareholders are and where you're based and so forth. But getting that commitment from the business is really important. Coordinating for water stewardship is all around getting the right kind of structures and platforms in place so that we actually can act in a structured and consolidated way. And then we need to undertake some planning. We need to engage with our stakeholders when we do that, but develop a plan and put forward some steps that we're going to take. And as I say, we don't have to do it all at once. Do take some initial steps and learn and go through that in a phased and progressive way. Phase three, which includes a singular step around sort of undertaking the actions themselves, but equally monitoring what we're doing, and tracking and in a sense reporting what we're doing and how we're achieving, and so forth. And then the last step is really this notion of evaluation and then disclosing, as I've said. So we want to sort of engender the notion of continual improvement. We're not going to get we're not going to get there in a day. It's going to take this sort of process of learning, making mistakes, disclosing how we've made mistakes and what we can learn from those mistakes, and then therefore improving based on those. Importantly, and this comes back to the notion of industrial parks versus the sort of park tenants, the businesses that are within the industrial parks. There are different approaches to the way that we can tackle water stewardship within these industrial parks and so on. The SOP doesn't go through this in a way that it sort of prescribes how that needs to unfold, and it can unfold in a way that is contextually relevant. So there are options. So I mean, obviously the cluster approach is in a sense where the industrial park management takes that responsibility and pulls all the businesses together within that industrial park. Everyone pulls together their resources, where we jointly agree on a water stewardship journey that you want to take, what those objectives are, and how we're going to realize when we've attained those objectives and so on. So in a sense, that industrial park then management takes the lead for that. That's not always necessarily relevant, and in some contexts we may have an option too, where actually sort of the localized business chambers play a far more stronger role in using the current platforms that are in place to sort of facilitate, support, and drive stewardship within particular parks, or with particular park tenants. And then a third option could be that actually, while we are in an industrial park context, that actually the park tenants individually pursue their own water stewardship agendas. And that's particularly important when we're dealing with sort of larger, sort of global actors that sometimes have to or are required to report back to shareholders who are, based in London or wherever in the world. And therefore, they do need to sort of consider their own corporate objectives. And of course, there's probably options that are in between all of these as well. The important thing to think about is collective versus individual action, and how we balance those, where accountability lies, and how we sort of generate support, who's going to take leadership, and how we sort of build and share capacity, because ultimately we have better impact when we act collectively. So that's put forward in the SOP. And then lastly, Bernd, I'm not going to go through these. I've just left these in the slide deck. There's a lot more detail here around each of these options and what the considerations are. I've left those in there because I think it's really useful, and it's quite a nice summary. And when we share the slides, everyone will have that summary and can use these in the way that they choose, and that's option 2, and that's option 3. So Bernd, I'm 2 minutes over, but that's a summary of the SOP.
Wow, Derek, thank you. You made up some time for us there. Fantastic. I think just before we go on to the panel discussion, I think for everyone to understand, let me just reiterate this. It is not a prescribed process. It is intended as a guideline. Okay. And the reason for that is that everyone's context is different. Okay. There are some basic steps that you need to go through, and Derek, you've done a great job here for us, just to share with everyone, exactly what those steps are. But, there are nuances that you as a particular operator in a park or a management agency might want to consider. Okay. And that is important for everyone to understand. Okay. Yeah. Right. Derek, thank you so much. I want to do an official ribbon cutting. Now, I don't have a ribbon, but I have scissors. Okay. So there's always the ribbon cutting, right, when you launch something. So forgive me for bringing in a bit of fun into this. So I just want to launch the SOP now and say, herewith, we cut the ribbon. Okay. Thanks for everyone's effort in this. Amanda, please paste the link to the guides that we have. What we have done, we are building a repository at NCPC for all kinds of documentation that pertains to eco-industrial parks. Okay. Of course, this will fit in there as well. So you are all welcome to go to that specific link. It is part of the NCPC website, to access that. Derek, you have your hand up.
Sorry, Bernd. Just one thing I sort of failed to mention. I did place quite a bit of emphasis on disclosure and sharing, and we need to continue to do that. There are various ways of doing that, and so engagements through NCPC and these kinds of organizations, institutions are really important. I just wanted to wave the flag around the Strategic Water Partners Network and the Water Stewardship Working Group that falls under the banner of SWPN. And I really would like to encourage everybody as much as possible to engage with SWPN, because there's a lot of rich sort of lesson learning and sharing through the SWPN vehicle. And that becomes a useful way for us continually to be learning and sharing. Thanks, Bernd.
Awesome. Thank you, Derek. Just to latch onto that as well, in the development of this guide, we had people from different organizations, of course, participate. And forgive me for speaking on their behalf, but both Department of Water and Sanitation and SALGA in that involvement actually raised the point that this guide could be of value even to a municipality or other kind of business that is not in an industrial park. So again, and that probably comes from the fact that it is not specific, and prescriptive, but really as a guide. There are various other angles from which one can look at this material. We are really proud of this. And, I hope you really use it, share it far and wide. This is not something that is copyrighted or anything. But please take the effort to send us feedback, okay, whether it is to DTIC, whether it's through NCPC or through GIZ. NCPC, of course, as I said earlier, because we are establishing a repository there for eco-industrial parks as part of the Global Eco-Industrial Park Program and the other activities that the National Cleaner Production Centre does in South Africa in support of eco-industrial parks, but also the just transition and the green economy or the circular economy. So please, send feedback, use this, have a look at it. I apologize in advance. If anybody knows me, I'm not, when I write these things, I don't stay to 2 pages. Okay, so it's partly my fault that this thing is a bit longer, but it's really useful information. Okay, and we would really hope and look forward to everyone using that. Okay, we've got to move on. We have to now move on to, the panel discussion, which Amanda will lead and guide for us. Raymond from IFC asked just before we do that, to take him through examples or case studies of successful water stewardship. Raymond, I think we need to invite you to the water stewardship, work that we're doing. Maybe Amanda, you can do that, because I think there you will really get exposed to a number of these. But Amanda, over to you.
Thank you so much, Brent. Raymond, just to close that off, there's one happening tomorrow. I'll send you the link, and please do join us if you have the time. Welcome and good morning, everybody. I think thank you, Derek, and the previous speakers. You've made my job a little bit easier for this session, but nonetheless, let's get into it. My name is Amanda Nyengov with the GIZ Natures program. The intention behind this panel discussion is to really, through our panelists, explore the different facets around sustainability, resilience, so that we can understand at a really subsurface and a practical level how can a living document such as the one that we've recently launched, link again in the chat, and it will be available with the NCPC and the NCPC repository there. So it's to really understand how can this living document really support industrial parks, park tenants, and really support that collective action around water and the efficient and sustainable use thereof. So yeah, without any further delay, I'd like to take this moment to just have our panelists come on and have their videos on so that we can engage on the exciting questions that I'm really looking forward to asking them today. So welcome, everybody. If we can just start with a quick round of introductions, just the brief ones, and I'll start with our Dr. Mark Dent from the Alliance for Water Stewardship, really a key partner in us being here today and us developing this document. So over to you, Mark.
Thank you so much, Amanda, and thank you for all involved, DTIC and all the partners. Very privileged to be here, both personally and representing the Alliance for Water Stewardship. Just a little bit on my background. I'm an agricultural engineer. I spent 40 years in research and academia, and then retired at the end of 2014 and started working for the Alliance for Water Stewardship as a consultant. During my working career, I had a great deal of dealings with the Department of Water Affairs and Forestry, and right through to DWS, it changed name several times, with the Water Research Commission and with the CSIR, and also with catchment management agencies. So I'm really delighted to see this continuous progress, and I think this particular work is a major step of progress. And so thank you very much for allowing me to be part of it. Just a last word, I'm currently very involved in capacity building and training for the Alliance for Water Stewardship. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. I hand over to you, Isaias. Please just brief introductions of your name and where you're from.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. Good morning, everyone. My name is Isaias Samuel. I'm from Ethiopia, Addis Ababa. I'm working for Water Witness International as a regional program manager. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isaias. Lee, I'm just going to precursor this from the NCPC, because, but please do have a moment to please kindly introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and your portfolio there.
Thank you very much, Amanda. I'm Leander Reiters from the National Cleaner Production Center of South Africa, and I am responsible for overseeing the Global Eco-Industrial Parks program in the center, as well as a number of other strategic initiatives that deals with eco-innovation, that deals with the tool development of tools for circular economy and green industry support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lee. And our panelists, last but certainly not the least, please do introduce yourself, Nontsikelelo, and tell us where you're from and your portfolio there.
Hi, I am a PhD researcher here at the Atlantis Special Economic Zone. My PhD is looking at sort of a gendered analysis of the water, energy, and food nexus here at the Industrial Park. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noni, and it's really an absolute pleasure to have all our panelists here today. So we've got a nice medley of views that will come out here today. So let's just get straight into it. And I've prepared a little bit of questions just to get the mood going here for us today. I'm going to start my first question. He alluded to it. Mark Dean told us that he's from the Alliance for Water Stewardship, and they're responsible for setting the global standards on water, the global standard rather on water stewardship. And we've just launched, and we've seen these SOPs that Derek presented for us today. And if you could just take us on a conversation on standard setting, and particularly in industrial parks, what significance does standard setting have, and does having a standard in industrial park have, and what have you seen being embodied and manifesting specifically in the industrial parks that have been AWS certified? You're on mute, Mark.
Sorry about that. Yeah, thank you. You know, given the urgency and the need to upscale the impact of water stewardship so fast worldwide, it's really important to act as clusters or groups, industrial zones or special economic zones. And most sites will look at the value proposition for their own site particularly, and the water management and costs, and there's a very direct linkage there. The challenge really becomes beyond the fence line. And there are many that look beyond the fence line and think, oh, that's someone else's responsibility. But water stewardship encourages people to work together collectively. It's very important. And engage stakeholders, not only just poor communities, but other major industrial players, agricultural players beyond the fence line, and then work within the parameters of the government regulations and laws and philosophies to develop wise and effective frameworks of action, and then to support that with mainly in-kind contributions. And so that's something which is gathering steam worldwide. At the moment, there are not many industrial parks or groups per se that have been certified, but it is a major thrust. And one of the ways the Alliance for Water Stewardship is doing that is through global players and global supply chains who have a major footprint of suppliers, and often those suppliers come from clusters, be they in the IT sector, textiles and apparel sector, agricultural sector, obviously, and also food and beverage. So we're working through those four main channels, and we're really delighted with the way this is picking up in South Africa. I think South Africa is going to show some really exponential organic growth through this sort of initiative.
Thank you, thank you, Mark, for that worldview and really bringing into focus, that clustering, and that certification element does bring that credibility to a process such as water stewardship. So yeah, thank you very much, Mark. You talked about gaining momentum. I think one person who's got a little bit more insight also around the whole aspect of water stewardship, gaining momentum, who will also take us into his insight would be Isaias. I'm going to hand over to you. Mark alluded a little bit of how momentum is coming along. Can you please take us into your insights around why do you think water stewardship, particularly in industrial parks, is gaining so much momentum, and in a context such as Africa, nonetheless?
Okay, thank you, Amanda. So yeah, this adds up, what Mark just explained. So to answer why stewardship is gaining momentum, it needs understanding how water stewardship works. So yeah, water stewardship is simply about proactive and positive engagement of water users to manage water risk and opportunities. So it enables systemic identification of risk, develop water risk response, and also strategies, and then implement those strategies, which will be followed by monitoring and evaluation against the plan. So that takes us to taking lesson and also taking action towards that. So this is a continuous process. So that this process is different from other standards and frameworks, because it's not limited to sites and single water users, but it covers catchment or landscape level with engagement of diverse stakeholders, as Mark just mentioned. So in the case of industrial parks, water stewardship is significantly relevant, and it contributes, for the momentum. So industrial parks are leased by different companies, in some cases homogeneous production, in others heterogeneous. But water stewardship drives engagement of these companies to identify their shared risk and opportunities, and to put their water stewardship actions in place. So in addition to mitigating the site and catchment level risk, credible water stewardship standards like the AWS provides internationally recognized third-party certification. For example, other initiatives, if you take the Higg Index or Sustainable Apparel Coalition, these guide responsible production in the textile and apparel sector, but they have been shown to fall short in their ability to safeguard water and water users. So we can raise several other factors, but in general, we can also take the global competition. So Africa's industrial parks need to compete on the global stage as a great place to do business and invest in. So, for example, water and climate risk, whether you call it related to pollution, loss of operational supply, safe wash for facilities and workers, or protection against drought and floods, can easily undermine the attractiveness of IPs as a operational base. So conversely, demonstration of good practice against globally recognized water stewardship standard or the SOPs which we are launching today will reassure investors and stakeholders. So applying stewardship at scale of a facility is much more effective than an individual business unit. So it makes much more sense to establish stewardship as a common guiding principle in practice across industrial parks.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Isaias, for bringing in that lens around South Africa, not South Africa, but Africa's industrial parks. They need to be at a globally competitive scale, and they need to buffer themselves against risks that are emerging, of which one of them, water, critically, is a risk that has a very detrimental impact when it comes to business continuity. And I think we've seen in South Africa those devastating effects, particularly with the floods that we experienced in the KZN area, where one of the industrial sites, Toyota actually's industrial sites, was affected there. And in that vein, I'm going to move over to Lee. Isaias has told us that we need to buffer the sites. We need to buffer industrial parks, and we need to ensure that they are resilient against changing climatic patterns. And you're with the National Cleaner Production Center, of which one of the roles is really empowering resource efficiency and green industrialization. If you can just take us into your thoughts, where do you see our industrial parks? Where do you see our special economic zones with regards to resiliency? And how do you see the SOPs supporting this aspect?
Thank you, Amanda. Yes, that's a great question. You know, we've been able to have some insight into the, just the current conditions and what's happening with industrial parks through the Global Eco-Industrial Parks program that's been mentioned a few times, in this call or in this launch, which is great. And so what we've picked up is that, of course, there is already a lot happening. And I think it's important to acknowledge that when it comes to greening and when it comes to resilience and driving a low carbon climate change resilience activities and strategies within industrial parks, there is a lot happening already in special economic zones as well as industrial parks. I think the challenge that we have is that there's varying degrees of development and application of resource efficiency strategies, low carbon climate change strategies and plans. And I think that's one of the areas that the Global Eco-Industrial Parks program, as well as a number of other programs and activities around industrial parks, have been supporting. Of course, what we do know is that with industrial parks, there is always a very unique aspect, very context-specific issues when it comes to resource efficiency. And there's a number of elements that influences resource consumption, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is the location, whether it is just services, basic services within a particular industrial area. A lot of those elements plays a role in the ability and the opportunity to improve resource efficiency and to green parks. I think what is important to note is that there is a lot of impetus already shown by many industrial parks. There's a lot of interest, and what we've picked up is that even though a lot of parks have been struggling, where some parks have been able to progress much easier, we see that there is a great interest in resource efficiency. There's a great interest in adopting approaches that can improve the resource efficiency. We've seen many attempts and many activities around energy efficiency, improving industrial waste management through industrial symbiosis activities, and of course, the focus on water stewardship is an important element to add to industrial water efficiency and ensuring that the water resource, which, as you say, is under a lot of stress nationally, needs to be preserved and needs to be managed within those environments. So I think it's really important. It's a really critical element to start introducing and for industrial parks to start going on this journey of water stewardship, as we have seen with the adoption of energy efficiency measures, whether it is renewable energy or whether it is just improving the use of energy and ensuring that companies and tenants have access to infrastructure. Similarly, it's important for water stewardship to be adopted.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Lee, for those really valuable insights around there. And I mean, I like how you say that there's a journey, it's a journey to water stewardship, and there's varying elements to resource efficiency, and water being a critical resource that we need to safeguard for investments and for socio-economic development in South Africa. And you speak of these varying elements, and I know there's varying elements to resource efficiency, and I know Nonnie is joining us from the Atlantis Special Economic Zone, and there, yeah, she's back.
I'm sorry.
My one panel away yet.
No. No, not yet.
She's back. Glad to have you back, Nonnie. Like I was saying, that there's one special economic zone that's also journeying on trying to navigate themselves around the various elements towards resource efficiency. And so I particularly know with the Atlantis SEZ, Nonnie, they've been engaged on a net zero water strategy. And after listening to the presentation of the SOPs, how do you think the SOPs could be complementary to the net zero water strategy that Atlantis is already looking at?
Yeah, thanks, Amanda. As Matt mentioned earlier, the ASEZ is obviously committed to becoming low carbon and resource efficient. And to achieve this, we've undertaken several studies. So this is the net zero water strategy we've partnered up with Pegasus to do. And the SOPs really embed water stewardship principles. And these principles support a more sort of structured approach to engagement, to our engagement processes with our different pillars at the ASEZ. It also supports transparency around water-related initiatives. And for us here, this is the exact processes being undertaken with Pegasus in developing our net zero water strategy, as we've taken a consultative approach. So that includes, community and industrialists and government officials, and engaging with a sort of wider stakeholder group. And I think that has been helpful in complementing our net zero water strategy that we're currently developing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Nonnie. Short and sweet, but very potent there. And especially when you talk around the areas of disclosure, this is something that Derek alluded to, that disclosure it's quite important to improving that reach around your water stewardship initiatives, but also drawing in partners to your water stewardship. So disclosure is not just about wrapping your knuckles. It's also inviting people into that conversation of water stewardship. So we heard earlier on around Tifo, who sees great potential when it comes to Tifo with the FCDO and the industrial parks in that area, who sees great potential when it comes to the implementation of the SOPs. And we've recently now heard from the Atlantis SEZ down there by the Western Cape. Esaias, I know from your end, there are a couple of special economic zones that you've been working with around in Africa, particularly North Africa and Ethiopia. Can you please just give us an example there also where water stewardship is taking on, and what are those lessons that you guys are learning from there?
Okay, thank you, Amanda. So yeah, as you said, we are supporting industrial parks in different parts like Tanzania, Ethiopia, and other areas as well. So if I focus on what we are doing in Ethiopia, So initially we planned to support 5 industrial parks based on the Industrial Parks Development Corporation's interest and also interest from the companies. Right now we are working in 5 industrial parks. One is the southern region and one is in the capital city. So these 2 Hawassa Industrial Park and also Buleleng Industrial Park, these are the biggest ones. Even they are taking the largest share of textile and apparel export from Ethiopia. So in these 2 parks, we are almost done with the first step, gathering and understanding in terms of identifying the water risk and also opportunities and developing the water stewardship plan. So it's almost a couple of years now since we started the implementation, and there are lots of lessons and lots of good progress going on the ground. By the end of this year or beginning of early next year, we will start compiling the lessons from these industrial parks, which we hope to share with other areas as well. So when we come to the lesson part, we can raise several factors. One of the most important one is site selection. So in Ethiopia, for example, the plan is to establish about 30 industrial parks. So far, 13 are constructed and operational. So when you see site selection, you see lots of dependence on secondary data, and sometimes decision made not prioritizing water and environmental factors. So you don't have to select your site and then identify the water risk. So it should be the water risk and other factors identified first, and then you select the site. So this is creating, some challenge in some areas. And then the other lesson is building local capacities. Mostly when you construct industrial parks, it's done by foreign companies or foreign investors. And then in terms of knowledge transfer and capacity development, there needs to be some work to be done. The other one is coordination of initiatives. There are different initiatives in terms of environment or water stewardship. So you see different development partners and initiatives going to the same industrial park with different approach. So that this sometimes creates a kind of donor fatigue. So it's important to have coordinated support and coordinated approach. For example, the SOP, the Eco-Industrial Parks framework, this can complement each other. So when we do the support or when we do the work in the industrial parks, it's better to go as a coordinated support than an individual initiative going in different directions. That's what I could say in short. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isaias. Just a wealth of information and knowledge coming out there. And you talk about coordination of initiatives and also understanding your water risk and site selection. And I know that site selection and understanding of water risks comes in with having the right tools to actually support you to do that. And I know one organization that has a lot of tools, Lee, I'm looking towards you with the NCPC. There are a lot of tools that are there, particularly around water metering. Can you just take us through just a selection of those tools? And I'll also pop in the link in the chat also about around those tools.
Thank you, Amanda. Yes, indeed, we have a number of tools that's been developed that can be applied. Some of them were developed, of course, outside, just within industry, but it's very applicable for industrial parks. So I think you mentioned water, of course. There is a water metering and measurement tool that was developed, and the link that you shared earlier contains those guides and access to the tools that we've put up. There's also just with in terms of eco-industrial parks, there is a number of links to the handbooks and the toolbox of what eco-industrial parks are, to give people a bit of a a background, but there are specific toolkits for energy, for industrial symbiosis, and also around park management. And that's something that Berend referred to earlier, how the importance of park management when addressing challenges that relates to resource efficiency. And of course, water is a core part of that. There's a toolkit for industrial parks based on water as well, and one on waste and planning and zoning. So there's a number of toolkits. One of the tools that we are working on right now that is, of course, very critical for all resource efficiency opportunities and measures that is identified is the access to finance tool. So that is critical because a lot of the opportunities and implementation options that we find needs to be financed and it needs to be implemented. So the access to finance tool is a really good one that is available. Then we also have a number of best practice guides on energy. And participants can take a look at some of the tools that we've developed and information packages that we've developed around power quality, biogas systems optimization, and just how to implement the energy management system, which is quite an important tool for ensuring consistent energy efficiency management. So energy management systems tool and the implementation of that is another excellent tool that can be used. So again, like you said earlier, thank you for sharing that link to the NCPC website. There is a number of tools there that participants can take a look at. There is a best practice guide on water, and there's also a guide on industrial water efficiency assessments. Of course, we have also now recently put the water stewardship document on there. So I think there's a lot for people to interact with and engage on, and our contact details are there if there's any additional questions. I think it's important just to note that the Global Eco-Industrial Parks program is currently still doing a number of training events, capacity building, where a lot of these tools are applied. So we do foresee some more training taking place during the course of this year, and a number of more tools that will be worked on and that will be developed for the use of industrial parks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lee. Thank you very much for that, and that toolbox of really important support factors and instruments for industrial parks. I think what Lee is also highlighting here is that these tools are complementary, but unfortunately, one of the things that we always get is that there's so much stuff that is happening already. I'm already pursuing my water conservation and demand management. I can't really take on another thing at the moment. But I think Noni has some really insights around how do you find this common ground. And I think my question also is alluding to the aspect that we're sort of doubling down now, and we're winding up our panel discussion. But Noni, can you please just share a little bit of your insights, particularly with the Atlantis case, how you can, with respect to conversations around, I'm already doing water conservation and demand management. I don't really need another water stewardship or another element to add to this.
Yeah. Well, I honestly don't think you can have like too many conversations around water, especially given our water scarcity issues in South Africa. But I do think water stewardship extends beyond water conservation and demand management. Sort of value creation and competitiveness in industrial parks are obviously driven by a lot of things. And the SOPs allow people, like I said earlier, to engage more widely, understanding shared risks and mitigating these shared risks together. The water stewardship SOPs support the elements of water conservation, of course, and water security promotes value creation and competitiveness of economic science. And economic science obviously achieve this in several ways. So traditional approaches like water conservation and demand management are vital to the process. But however, facility, exists within a catchment, or Atlantis exists within a catchment. And it is this catchment-based sort of view that is espoused in the SOPs, which extends a step further than the traditional methods that we know. And supply chains are obviously located in the catchment. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nani, for that insight. I mean, it ties in very well with the conversation around value creation, the conversation around different facets to ensuring competitiveness inside, and water stewardship being one of those elements to do that. And also it takes into account those water conservation and demand management and traditional approaches. So the person to say our last word, definitely also not the least person for our panel. I'm going to shine a spotlight to Mark Dent from the Alliance for Water Stewardship. And I want to say this as we are trying to wrap up and close off this panel discussion, that no system is perfect. And I know for one that the Alliance for Water Stewardship standard has gone through a process of 2 iterations. They're on the second one now. I will also share the link to where you can find that standard on their website. So no system is perfect. There are obviously challenges. And we did say this was a living document and a living process. So in your implementation and working with the AWS standard, what are some of the challenges that you've been encountering, and what advice can you offer to industrial parks as they work on this journey, like so aptly put, Lee, on this journey of water stewardship and this journey of embedding water stewardship in their industrial parks?
Yeah, thank you, Amanda. I think you teed me up very nicely there with we're a learning organization. We are owned by our members, and we have about 170 members, both from government, business, and civil society. And as you say, the standard is a living document. We are a member of the ISEAL Alliance, and one of the requirements there is that every 5 years that document be revised. And so it contains the lessons from all our learning over that time. And I think in a very short time, the one piece of advice I would give to industrial parks folk and leaders is believe in yourselves. You can do this. One of the biggest impediments we find is that people look beyond the fence line and they say, "Oh no, we can do the stuff within the fence line where we have command and control, but beyond the fence line, that's new territory for us." Well, I can share a document with you, Amanda, and you can spread it to all the participants. I wrote a document specifically addressing that issue. There are so many areas in our normal day-to-day business where we deal with customers and suppliers beyond the fence line. We deal with the issue of influence rather than command and control. We look at things like whole systems thinking. Self-regulation and taking self-responsibility for things. All of those are intrinsic things. In our labor management bargaining, we bargain with interest-based bargaining paradigms rather than rights-based bargaining. We look at a lot of strategic issues beyond our fence line in terms of many things we can't control, the world economy, exchange rates. As businesses, we engage in collective actions through business chambers, the NBI, SWPN, for example, cane growers and agriculture, SPA, buying consortia. The list is endless. The National Cleaner Production Center, for example, is an excellent example in those sort of cooperation beyond the fence line. And then we also are normally the individual sites have got very good customer relations. People that they don't own, they can't command and control, just like your water stakeholders. Financial concepts of critical mass and economies of scale, looking at sunk costs and lock-in, marginal returns, in-kind contributions, and so on. There are many, many aspects of normal everyday business which can be applied in the catchment as well. And particularly looking at things like value at risk. Noni mentioned, value creation and value at risk. And then also co-generating information and knowledge so that it becomes socially robust and acceptable and actionable. Things like modeling, what-if scenarios, practice drills. We do this with all sorts of emergencies. And we co-generate options in many, many aspects and portions of our work in business. And we look to respond systemically to things. We look at business continuity, due diligence for investors, and the list goes on and on. So a lot of those things, those generic skills for those things, you've got this. And if you just apply those strategically beyond the fence line, my advice to industrial park sites and leaders is you can do this.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mark. What a sweet and wonderful way, very encouraging way to end off our panel discussion for today. I would just like to take a moment to really thank you and thank you all our panelists for joining us, and thank you to everybody who stayed with us during this panel. It's truly been exciting, and I mean, I think just to wrap it up, believe in yourself, that commitment aspect coming through. Engage widely. We need to use the available tools and resources to support our journey so that we're able to create and ensure value creation in our industrial parks for socio-economic development, because that's where we need to also hinge it on. We know the triple threat in South Africa. We've got to hinge it on that socio-economic development path. So thank you so much, everybody. And yeah, just going to give over to our program director. My panelists have been amazing, and really, thank you very much. Bernd, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, our panel. Just a last couple of parting words and the way forward. We have pasted the link, of course, to the stewardship guide, but also to other documents that are available from NCPC's website. Also took the liberty of pasting a link to the UNIDO International. Well, it's not the UNIDO. It was developed by UNIDO, GIZ, and World Bank together, the International Eco-Industrial Park Framework, which could be quite relevant and can be quite a useful tool for at least some of you. So the way forward. Well, any guide is as good as its use. Okay, so please use this. Okay, and quite frankly, if you think this is a whole lot of rubbish, let's put it in a nice way, please let us know. Okay, so this was developed, as pointed out initially, in consultation with a whole range of people, but the intention is to use it. Okay, so even if it's just going to help you build some awareness, and I think the first step in that whole process that we are mapping out in the stewardship guide is useful. The second thing I would just like to say, the whole concept of stewardship can be applied not just to water. We can actually apply it to other resources. We can actually apply it to energy. And we should actually apply it to the kind of work that we do every day. Okay? So ask yourself this question: am I a good steward of the things that I have? Okay? This can apply at the personal level. So the kind of value that you've been given, the purpose, the reason why you're on planet Earth, okay, in your 60 or 70 or 110 years, if you're lucky, okay, are you a good steward of those gifts and talents that you've been given? Are you sharing that with people? Are you giving it to others? Number one. Secondly, are you as an organization, as a team player, as a stakeholder, maybe in eco-industrial parks, in the water space, it doesn't matter where you are you being a good steward of the things that you need to do to make things better? Okay, so I want to end with one short story. We're almost done, and then we can all go our ways. The story I want to share is one that some of you are familiar with, so I apologize if I repeat it, but it has changed my life drastically. And it comes out of a book called Chicken Soup for the Soul that was published many years ago. I'm not going to say how many years, I think it's like 30 years or something. Okay. In this story, effectively, that's captured in this book. And I'm just going to sketch it for you. Imagine you sitting on the beach early in the morning and it's only you. Okay. So those of you who are really stressed out and worked out and, dumped with all kinds of things. Imagine you sitting on the beach. There's no one but you. And I mean, those of you who've been on the beach early in the morning, you will know it's beautiful. Yeah. Listening to the waves, maybe a gentle breeze, and you're sitting and you're just taking this beautiful scenery. Then this person that writes the story sees a man coming in the distance walking along the water's edge. And every now and then this man stoops, picks something up and throws it into the water. So he thinks, well, he must be picking up shells or something. Okay, but obviously, us being human beings, we want to engage with others, right? So he walks down to the water's edge and introduces himself. And he sees it's an elderly gentleman. And he says, so they have a bit of a chit-chat. And then he asks, but I see you picking things up. What are you picking up? And then the man points down to his feet, and suddenly he sees all these starfish washed ashore. Okay, now, starfish, just those of you who don't know, are a great indicator of the health of the ocean. They're quite sensitive to salinity and water temperature, for example. But you can imagine that it's actually a catastrophe if all these starfish wash onto the shore. Okay, so this guy looks down at the starfish and says, but you cannot hope to possibly make a difference to these starfish. And you know what the old man does? He stoops down, he picks up one, he throws it back into the water, and he says, I just made a difference to that one. Let that just sink in a bit. I just made a difference to that one. I want to encourage you all. Make a difference to one. Start with that. Don't worry about changing the whole world all at once, overnight, everything, whatever you do. Make a difference to one. Okay, let me leave you with that message. I hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you for being with us throughout this morning and for the launch. And I really look forward to engaging you all. Have a beautiful day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Well done, Bernd. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Bernd.
guys.
Thank you, everyone, for joining
Thank
us.
you, Bernd.
Thank you,
Bye.
Brent. Thank you, Derek. Amanda,
Thank you, everyone.
great job. Yeah.